My name is Michael Foster, and this is the story of how I discovered that sometimes the cruelest betrayals can lead to the most unexpected triumphs. In both business and family, the person you trust most can turn out to be the one secretly planning your downfall. What they often forget, however, is to look carefully at the ground beneath them before trying to push you off the cliff. Let me take you back to where it all began. Foster Technologies didn't start as the $100 million company it is today. 15 years ago, it was merely a struggling IT consulting firm my father had built from nothing. He was a genius with technology but hopeless at business. By 2010, the company was only 3 months away from bankruptcy, and the stress was wrecking his health. I was 25, fresh out of business school, while my older brother James, 30 at the time, was already well known in the city's nightlife scene. My father had always favored James, the charming firstborn who could talk his way out of any situation. But charm doesn't pay bills, and his endless nights of partying had already cost us several important clients. I'll never forget the rainy Tuesday when I found Dad slumped over his desk, tears pooling in his eyes as he stared at our latest financial reports. "It's over, Michael," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Everything I've built, I'm going to lose it all." Something inside me snapped that day. I couldn't stand by and watch my father's dream collapse, even if he had always seen me as second best. While James was out burning company money at high-end clubs, I was pulling 18-hour shifts. I forced myself to learn every corner of the business, met every client, and reviewed every single contract. Mom would bring dinner to my office at midnight, worrying aloud. "Michael, you need rest. You can't save this company alone." But saving it was exactly what I intended to do. That first year nearly broke me. I restructured our debt, slashed unnecessary costs, including James's entertainment expenses, and personally reapproached every client we had lost. Many slammed the door in my face, but I kept returning. Persistence has a way of paying off, and by the end of the year we had finally broken even. James thought the whole thing was a joke. "Look at little Mikey playing businessman," he'd laugh when he occasionally showed up at the office. "Dad's still going to put me in charge, you know, I'm the oldest." I ignored him and poured myself into the work. Over the next 5 years, I rebuilt Foster Technologies from the ground up. We moved beyond simple IT consulting, developed proprietary software, expanded into cloud services, and established ourselves as leaders in digital transformation. Revenue climbed from $2 million to $10 million, then to $50 million, and last year we broke $100 million. Our staff grew from 20 to more than 500, with offices in 3 countries. As the company thrived, Dad's health improved, though his favoritism never changed. At family dinners, he would gush about James's business instincts, while I sat quietly scrolling through quarterly reports. I didn't crave the praise. I cared about our employees, our clients, and the legacy we were building. And besides, I had my own plans. No one knew, not even my father, that I had been documenting everything over the years. Every deal James sabotaged, every client he drove away, every dollar he wasted. I had also spent years cultivating direct relationships with our key clients, making myself indispensable. And I had one more secret, one that would prove critical. When the company was on the brink of collapse, I had poured in my personal savings and taken out private loans just to keep us afloat. In return, I received shares, many shares. Hidden in the endless paperwork of corporate filings was proof that I legally owned 40% of Foster Technologies. I thought that would protect me. I couldn't have been more wrong. Everything shifted last month when Dad announced his retirement. Everyone expected me to be named successor. After all, I had been running the company in all but title. Even James had started showing up to work more frequently, sensing change in the air. The shareholders' meeting was scheduled for a Friday afternoon. Board members, key investors, and major stakeholders filled the room. I had prepared a detailed 5-year growth plan, confident the company's future was secure. Then Dad stood to speak. I noticed James smirking in his chair but brushed it off. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dad began, "as you know, I am stepping down as CEO of Foster Technologies. This company has been my life's work, and choosing my successor has not been easy." He paused, scanning the room. "But there is only one person who embodies the leadership qualities required to take this company into the future. My son, James Foster, will assume the role of CEO, effective immediately." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. But Dad wasn't finished. Furthermore, he continued, James has made me aware of troubling irregularities in recent operations. It appears that someone has been making unauthorized decisions that risk the company's integrity. James stood, holding a folder. Unfortunately, my brother Michael has been exceeding his authority, making promises we cannot keep and engaging in questionable practices. I sat frozen. Every accusation was a distortion of the very decisions that had saved and grown the company. As my final act as CEO, Dad declared, I am terminating Michael's employment with Foster Technologies, effective immediately. Security guards were already approaching. James's voice oozed with false sympathy. Sorry it had to end this way, little brother. Maybe now you'll finally get a life outside the office. As whispers rippled through the room, I was escorted out. My keycard deactivated, my access revoked. Faces turned toward me, some with pity, others with barely concealed satisfaction. What none of them realized was that while James had been scheming for my downfall, he had overlooked 3 crucial things. Every questionable decision had been thoroughly documented and signed off. Second, my 40% stake in the company wasn't nearly as hidden as they assumed. And third, well, let's just say that after spending 10 years designing the company's entire technological backbone, I knew exactly where all the skeletons were buried. Some, quite literally. That evening, as I slid into my car, I pulled out my phone and sent a single text to an old contact at the SEC. Then I went home and waited. Monday was going to be very, very different. When it finally arrived, it came with a thunderstorm, an appropriately dramatic backdrop for what was about to unfold. I sat in my home office watching the minute hand crawl toward 9. By then, James would be strutting into the CEO's office for the first time, convinced his reign had officially begun. The weekend had been eventful. My mother had called 17 times, leaving tearful messages about family unity. My father hadn't called at all. James had been too busy flaunting his victory at his favorite clubs. The photos were everywhere online, including a few where the company credit card sat plainly visible on the table. Typical James. He'd always sneered at technology, calling it geek stuff, and never bothered to learn even basic cybersecurity practices. That arrogance was about to sink him. At 9:15 a.m., my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah, my longtime assistant, the one James hadn't thought to fire because he assumed she was just there to fetch coffee. It's starting, she wrote. I opened my laptop and connected to the company's internal security system. Of course, I still had access. When you build a fortress, you always leave yourself a hidden gate. The camera in the CEO's office showed James strolling in with his latte, settling into my old chair, and pressing the power button on his computer. That's when the show began. Instead of the login screen, a video started playing, surveillance footage from 3 years earlier. There he was, in that very office, cutting a deal with our largest competitor. The audio was sharp and damning. Of course I can get you the client data. My idiot brother does all the work anyway. Just make sure the payment lands in my Cayman account. James scrambled, jabbing at buttons, yanking cords, but the video kept rolling, not only on his monitor, but on every screen in the office. And it was just the beginning. His phone lit up. The SEC had just received a tip about insider trading, complete with meticulously documented evidence of a decade's worth of his illegal activity. His inbox pinged nonstop as confidential emails, now forwarded to the board, poured in. Down in the lobby, federal agents walked through the glass doors. I watched his face shift from annoyance to disbelief, then to outright panic. He tried calling our father, but Dad's line was busy, likely because he was learning the truth about his golden son at that very moment. By 9:30, Sarah entered his office with calm precision. "Mr. Foster," she said, "the board has requested an emergency meeting. Also, there are federal agents here to speak with you." James was drenched in sweat. "Tell them I'm busy. Cancel everything. And get IT in here to fix these damn computers." Sarah gave a polite smile. "That won't be possible. The entire department just resigned. They sent a company-wide email explaining their reasons. Something about loyalty to the one who actually built this company." James gaped. "They can't do that. We have contracts." "Actually," Sarah replied, placing a folder on his desk, Their contracts were with a subsidiary that owns all our intellectual property, a company that, as of this morning, is no longer tied to Foster Technologies. James's hands trembled as he opened the folder. Inside was a document outlining the ownership of Foster Innovation Labs, the subsidiary I had quietly formed years ago. The subsidiary that owned every patent, every piece of software, every client agreement. A company I alone controlled. But the clients, he stammered. Already notified, Sarah said. Most have signed fresh contracts with Innovation Labs. They'd rather deal with the person who's managed their accounts all these years. The blood drained from James's face as the reality set in. Everything that made Foster Technologies valuable, technology, clients, staff, was aligned with me. All he had stolen was an empty shell. The door opened again. 2 FBI agents entered, followed by Mr. Patterson, our legal counsel. James Foster, one agent said. We need to ask you about certain financial transactions. You can't do this, James shouted, wild-eyed. I'm the CEO. I'm in charge. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. Not anymore. The board just voted to remove you as CEO, effective immediately. They can't fire me. You own shares, Patterson interrupted. Shares in a company that, as of 9/1 this morning, has no intellectual property, no key staff, and no major clients. The stock price reflects that. James lunged for his computer, probably to check the market, but the screens continued looping his crimes for all to see. Within moments, the agents were escorting him out. His designer suit was crumpled, his face ghostly pale. Meanwhile, I sent one final message through the company network. To all employees, you have a choice. Stay aboard a sinking ship, or join us at Foster Innovation Labs, where innovation and integrity actually mean something. Your positions are secure, your benefits will improve, and most importantly, your work will finally be respected. Within an hour, 90% of the staff had accepted. But my work, my revenge, wasn't quite finished. Still, there was the matter of dear old Dad's retirement fund. The fallout was spectacular. Within 24 hours, Foster Technology stock had plummeted 70%. News of James's arrest made headlines in every major business publication. Tech CEO arrested on multiple fraud charges. Foster Technologies in freefall as scandal erupts. But I wasn't done yet. 3 days after James's arrest, I sat in my new office at Foster Innovation Labs headquarters, a modern building I had secretly purchased 6 months earlier. Sarah walked in with a familiar face. Dad's financial advisor, Mr. Goldman. He's been calling nonstop, Mr. Goldman said, looking uncomfortable. Ever since he realized that his retirement fund is worthless. Because he invested everything in Foster Technology stock. I finished for him. Dad had always bragged about having skin in the game, keeping his entire retirement portfolio in company shares. It was poor financial planning, but he never listened to advice about diversification. Now those shares were worth pennies on the dollar. Your father is desperate, Mr. Goldman continued. Mrs. Foster, your mother, she's worried they might lose the house. I leaned back in my chair, thinking about all the times Dad had dismissed my warnings about James's behavior. All the times he attributed my success to luck rather than hard work. Set up a meeting, I finally said. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. here. The next morning, my parents arrived at Foster Innovation Labs. Mom looked like she'd been crying. Dad looked as if he'd aged 10 years in a single week. They sat across from me in the visitor chairs, the same model Dad once made me sit in while he lectured me about real leadership. Son, Dad began, his voice shaking. I know I made mistakes, I interrupted quietly. You let James destroy evidence of his crimes. You helped him embezzle company funds. You were complicit in fraud that hurt our employees, our clients, and our shareholders. I didn't know. He tried to protest. You knew. I cut him off. You just didn't care. Because James was your golden boy and I was just the backup plan. Mom started crying softly. I handed her a tissue. But that's not why you're here, I continued. You're here because you're broke. Because the company's shares that were supposed to fund your retirement are worthless. Dad slumped in his chair. Michael, please, we're family. Family? I smiled without humor. Was I family when you let James take credit for my work? Was I family when you fired me in front of the entire company? I pulled out a folder. I had learned that dramatic revelations were more effective with proper documentation. Here's what's going to happen. Foster Innovation Labs will buy back your shares in Foster Technologies at their original purchase price. Their eyes widened with hope, but I continued. There are conditions. First, you both sign a non-disclosure agreement about James's activities. Second, you retire quietly to that house in Florida you always talked about. Third, you stay out of my business completely. You'd do that for us? Mom whispered. Not for you, I corrected. For the scared 12-year-old boy who used to believe his father hung the moon. He deserved better than what you gave him. Dad started to speak, but I held up my hand. One more thing. The money comes with a trustee. Someone who makes sure you don't gamble it away on another one of James's schemes. Monthly allowance, investment restrictions, the whole package. You don't trust us, Dad said bitterly. You taught me that lesson very well. They signed the papers. As security escorted them out, Dad turned back one last time. I was wrong about you, son. You're a better businessman than I ever was. No, Dad, I replied. I'm just better at remembering who my real enemies are. 5 years have passed since then. Foster Innovation Labs is now a billion-dollar company, known for its cutting-edge technology and ethical business practices. James served 2 years in prison and now works as a bartender in Vegas. Mom and Dad live quietly in Florida, sending occasional postcards I never answer. Last week, I received an invitation to speak at my old business school. The topic? The importance of integrity in family business. I accepted with a smile. After all, I have quite a story to tell. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building something so successful that they're forced to live with the knowledge that they bet on the wrong horse. And as for those who wonder how the quiet one, the careful one, the backup plan pulled off such a complete victory, well, let's just say that while the peacocks are busy showing off their feathers, the eagles are watching, waiting, and planning their next move. Because in business, just like in life, it's not about who starts at the top. It's about who's still standing when the dust settles.